used to rent out the spare room in my apartment on Airbnb. It was an easy way to make extra money, especially living close to downtown. Most guests stayed a few nights, kept to themselves, and left without issue. Then came Mark. He booked for 3 nights. His profile had one blurry photo and no reviews, but his message was polite. In town for work, need a quiet spot. He arrived right on time, mid-30s, tall, soft-spoken. Nothing felt off. The first night, I barely saw him. He dropped his bag in the guest room and left again. The second night, I heard him pacing quietly after midnight, just soft footsteps, back and forth. By the third morning, I noticed he hadn't used the shower. The towels were still perfectly folded. I hadn't heard the sink run. The guest room door remained closed. When I got home that evening, the hallway light was on. I never leave it on. His door was closed, but I could hear faint breathing inside. Just breathing. I knocked lightly. No answer. Another knock. Still nothing. I said through the door, just checking if everything's okay. A pause. Then, yeah, all good. His voice sounded different. Slower. Lower. That night, I double-locked my bedroom door for the first time since moving in. The next morning was checkout. I waited until 11 a.m., then knocked. No answer. When I opened the door, the room was empty. Bed untouched, curtains drawn, the closet slightly open. No bag. No signs of anyone having stayed. I stood there, confused. Maybe he left early, but the keys weren't on the counter. I texted him. No reply. That night, I reset the room. Clean sheets, fresh towels, and listed it again. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to a noise. A single click. I sat up in bed, heart racing. The door to the guest room creaked. I had closed it earlier. I stepped into the hallway. The room was dark, but the closet was now wide open. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I contacted Airbnb. They said the guest's account had been deactivated. No explanation, no contact info. I checked the apartment again. Nothing missing, but the air felt wrong. The smell in the room was off, damp wood and faint sweat. I cleaned the place twice. That night, I didn't hear anything until 4:06 a.m. The hallway light turned on. I saw the glow under my door. Then soft steps. They stopped right outside my room. No knock, no voice, just silence. Then the light went off and the footsteps faded away. I changed the locks the next day, installed a hallway camera. I stopped renting the room, stayed inside, but the hallway light kept turning on. Always between 2 and 4 a.m. The footage showed nothing, just darkness. Then light. Then darkness again. One night I left my door open. I needed to prove it was all in my head. At 3:33 a.m., I woke up to breathing. Not mine. From the hallway. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I slowly grabbed my phone and checked the live feed. No one there, but the breathing continued. Long, slow. Then, floorboards creaked. Then silence. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. The light turned on at 3:32. But 16 seconds before that, the feed went black. When it returned, the closet door was open again. I nailed it shut, screwed it down, thought I'd solved it. But the next night, the closet was open again. The footage showed a man standing there, not looking at the camera, looking into the hallway, toward my room. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited, phone in hand, every light on. At 3:41, I heard it again. Steps, hallway creaking. This time I didn't freeze. I got up, opened my door. He was standing there, not surprised, not angry, just waiting. We stared at each other for what felt like a lifetime. Then he moved, slowly, back into the guest room, into the dark. I followed. The room was cold, the closet wide open, empty, but the smell, it was stronger now, damp, moldy, and sharp, like something had rotted in the walls. I turned on the light, searching. Floorboards, corners, behind the door, and then I saw it. On the inside of the closet, carved into the wood, were markings, tally marks. Dozens of them, hundreds, some deep, some fresh. Beneath them, scratched in jagged lines, 2 words. Still here. Suddenly, the bedroom door slammed behind me. I spun around. No one was there, but I heard footsteps running. Away, not toward me, toward the front of the apartment. I chased them. The hallway camera caught a blur. A man, barefoot, thin, clothes torn, sprinting out the front door before disappearing into the dark street. I filed a police report, gave them the footage. They never found him. He had been living in the walls, in the crawl space, inside my home. Since then, I've sealed the guest room, changed apartments, thrown away everything from that place. But sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, not from a dream, from something else. A click, a creak, and breathing, like someone still thinks they're welcome here. I never used to think twice about what I posted online. Pictures of my coffee, my dog, sunsets from my balcony, the usual, nothing personal. At least, that's what I told myself. It started with a like. A username I didn't recognize liked 5 of my posts in a row, random ones, months apart. Then a follow. His profile had no picture, no bio, and 2 posts. A blurry city skyline and a close-up of a cracked phone screen. Something about it felt off. Still, I didn't block him. I barely noticed. Then the messages started. At first, they were harmless. Beautiful view. I like your dog. Nice morning light. I ignored them. I thought if I didn't respond, he'd get bored. He didn't. Over the next week, he kept messaging. Always polite, never threatening, but constant. Every day. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes past midnight. I finally muted him. That's when he commented on a story. It was just a clip of me making tea with a caption. "Rainy mornings like this," he replied. "Looks cozy. I like your blue mug." I froze. I hadn't shown the mug. The camera had been facing the window. The mug was off frame in my hand. There was no way he should have seen it. I checked the video again. It wasn't visible. That's when the sick feeling started. That quiet panic that builds in your stomach and doesn't go away. I didn't post anything for the next 3 days. Then he sent the first photo. It was my building, taken from the street. Not artistic, not aesthetic, just documentation. The kind real estate agents or cops would take. Concrete, windows, blinds. It came with a caption. "Nice spot. Quiet, I bet." I blocked him instantly, reported the account, set everything to private. My hands were shaking as I locked my door and double-checked the windows. I even moved a chair under the doorknob, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, home alone during storms. That night, I barely slept. Every little creak made me sit up. I started keeping the TV on for background noise, just so I didn't have to listen to the silence. The next morning, there was a new message request, different username, 0 followers. No posts, just one message. "Why'd you block me?" I didn't reply. 2 days passed. Then another message, this time from yet another new account. "I just want to be close to you." I felt sick. I went through all my old posts, double-checking what might have given away my location. There were clues everywhere. A bakery name on a bag, the reflection of a street sign in my sunglasses, a delivery box with a partial zip code. I'd never realized how much I was handing out. I stopped posting completely, deleted everything, turned off location services, changed passwords. I even taped over the webcam, but I still felt like he was watching. It didn't stop him. One evening, as I got home, I noticed something on my doormat, a folded piece of paper. I opened it slowly. It was a printout, a screenshot of my Instagram profile, and written across it in marker, "Why are you hiding from me?" I called the police. They came, took a statement, looked around the building. They were polite but detached. "Could be a prank," they said. "Could be someone you know." I didn't know anyone like that. And if I did, I didn't want to. After they left, I installed cameras. One on the peephole, one facing the street. I barely left my apartment. I worked remotely, so I didn't have to. My life shrank to 4 rooms and a screen. I started ordering groceries just once a week, and only during daylight hours. I kept the blinds closed at all times. I stopped answering the door completely. One night, the camera outside pinged a notification. Movement detected. 2:41 a.m. I opened the app up. A man in a hood stood across the street. Still. Just standing there. Not smoking. Not on his phone. Just watching. He stayed for 6 minutes, then walked away. No message followed. No photo. No sign that he knew I'd seen him. The next night, it happened again. Same hour. Same place. Same silence. I couldn't see his face. The resolution wasn't clear enough, but something about his posture felt familiar, like I'd seen him in passing once, or maybe wanted to believe I hadn't. I started sleeping with the lights on. One morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. I let it ring. Then the voicemail came. No words, just soft breathing. And in the background, the faint sound of my own voice from a video I'd posted months ago, one I had deleted, one I thought no one had saved. I threw up. I went to the police again. They were sympathetic, more concerned this time. They asked if I'd ever shared my number online. I hadn't, not directly, but it didn't matter anymore. That night, I checked the hallway camera. The man was inside the building. He didn't knock, didn't try the door. He just stood there, still, breathing, looking at the camera. Then he turned and smiled. Not a grin, just the smallest shift at the corner of his mouth, like he knew exactly how terrified I was. Then he walked away. I haven't seen him since, but I don't feel safe, not even now, because every time I post, even the smallest thing, I wonder, is he watching? How long has he been watching? And how close is he willing to get? I drive the same road home every night after my shift ends. It's a lonely stretch of 2-lane highway that cuts through woods and farmland for about 30 minutes before I hit the edge of town. Most nights, I don't see more than a couple of cars the entire way. That night, I noticed the SUV just after I pulled out of the gas station. It was black, newer model, maybe a Tahoe or a Suburban. It turned out behind me and kept a steady distance. Headlights bright in my rearview mirror. I didn't think much of it at first. It was late, and we were both probably just heading home. 10 minutes later, I realized it hadn't changed lanes once. It followed me through 2 turns and a long stretch of road that's usually empty after dark. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. To test it, I turned onto a side road I almost never use. It leads through a wooded area and loops back to the main highway. It's slower, bumpier, and there's no reason to take it unless you live out that way. The SUV turned behind me. That was the first time I felt my heart skip. I tried to shake it off. Maybe they were heading the same way. Coincidence, I thought. Nothing more. But the road was narrow, and I slowed down to let them pass. They didn't. Instead, they matched my speed. When I went faster, they did too. When I braked slightly, so did they. Always keeping the same distance. Never getting closer. Never falling back. That's when the tension started crawling up the back of my neck. I turned off the music and lowered the window just enough to hear the wind. It was quiet. No other cars. No wildlife. Just the hum of my tires and the soft roar of their engine behind me. At the next intersection, I made a sharp right, faster than I normally would. The tires squealed slightly. I watched my mirror. The SUV followed. No signal. No hesitation. I gripped the wheel tighter. There's a small diner off the next road, open 24/7. I thought about pulling in. Somewhere with people, lights, cameras. But I made a mistake. I hesitated. I slowed down just enough to consider it, then passed the turn. In the mirror, I saw the SUV hesitate too, just for a second. But then it stayed on me. They were watching me, not following by accident. At that point, My body was in full alert mode. Chest tight, jaw clenched. Every bump in the road felt magnified. I tapped my phone to call someone, anyone, but I had no signal out there. Of course I didn't. There's a part of that route with no streetlights and thick woods on both sides. As I entered it, the SUV behind me turned off its headlights. Just like that. Gone. The road was pitch black. My taillights lit up the trees behind me for a moment, but the SUV vanished into the darkness. I hit the gas. My car isn't fast, but I pushed it harder than I ever had. Every corner felt like it might throw me off the road, but I didn't care. I just needed distance. I needed to see lights, houses, anything. Then I saw them. Headlights. They blinked on again, far too close behind me. He'd been tailing me in the dark. No lights, no sound, just gliding behind me like a shadow. That's when I truly panicked. I ran a stop sign. I turned down a gravel road I'd never used before. The stones kicked up hard under my tires, and the whole car shook. But I didn't care. I looked in the mirror. Still behind me. Same distance. Same cold precision. He wasn't trying to get ahead. He wasn't honking. He wasn't signaling. Just following. I felt like prey. Every instinct screamed at me to get somewhere public. I tried to remember if I passed a police station earlier. I hadn't. Not out here. Just farms, trees, and open dark. I pulled a sharp U-turn, nearly sliding into the ditch. Gravel flew, dust rose. My car groaned under the strain. I shot back the way I came. This time, finally, the SUV didn't follow. Or maybe he did. With the lights off again. I wasn't sure. I kept checking the rearview mirror so much I barely watched the road ahead. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. I felt like I was being hunted. I kept driving until I saw the glowing green lights of a 24-hour pharmacy just off the main road. I pulled in fast, parked crooked across 2 spots, and ran inside. There was a woman at the counter and a sleepy-looking pharmacist restocking shelves. They both looked up when I came in. I must have looked wild. I didn't say anything, just stood there for a moment, catching my breath. After a few minutes, I looked outside. The SUV was parked across the street, engine off, headlights off. I couldn't see who was inside, just a dark shape in the driver's seat, barely visible behind the tinted glass. I stayed in the store for nearly an hour, pretending to shop, using the bathroom, pacing the aisles. I didn't want to leave. I knew if I stepped outside, they might follow again. They might be waiting for it. When I finally worked up the nerve to go back outside, the SUV was gone. I drove home taking a completely different route, watching my mirrors the whole way. I didn't sleep that night. I barely slept the next. I never saw that SUV again, but now, every time I drive at night, I check. Every turn, every mirror, every time a car follows me too long, I wonder if it's him, just waiting, with the lights off, in the dark. I've always considered my bedroom a safe space, the one place where I could truly relax after a long day. It was late one night, close to midnight, when I lay in bed, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional car passing somewhere far down the road. My window was slightly cracked open, letting in the cool night air and the subtle chorus of crickets outside. At first, I didn't even notice the sound, just a faint snap, like a small branch breaking. I brushed it off as some animal wandering through the yard, maybe a stray cat, maybe nothing at all. But a few minutes later, I heard it again. This time it was different, not random, not like something brushing against a bush. It was distinct, deliberate, a footstep. I paused my phone and held my breath, straining my ears. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, another step. This one heavier, closer, pressing down into the dirt outside my window. My stomach knotted instantly, like my body understood the danger before my mind could catch up. My blinds were closed, but I couldn't shake the image of someone standing just beyond them, watching, waiting. My heart began to race. The sound came again. Slow, steady steps circling, stopping directly beneath the window. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, every muscle tense, my ears locked on the night air. Whoever was out there wasn't in a hurry. They were taking their time, listening. And that's when it hit me. Those footsteps weren't passing by. They were meant for me. The silence after that last step was unbearable. I sat frozen on my bed, every nerve in my body screaming at me to do something, but I couldn't decide what. My phone was still in my hand. Its screen dimmed, and for a moment the room was swallowed in darkness. I strained my ears, waiting for anything. A sound, a breath, the scrape of a shoe. But there was nothing. Just silence. Then, I heard it again. A single, deliberate step. Not hurried, not clumsy. Calm, almost careful. The sound shifted to the side of the house, crunching faintly over gravel. My heart pounded so hard, I thought whoever was outside would hear it. I forced myself off the bed, moving slowly across the room. My feet felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. I reached the window, and with my hand trembling, lifted one slat of the blinds just enough to peek through. The yard looked empty. The faint glow from the streetlight down the road revealed nothing but the trees swaying gently. But then the sound came again, from the opposite side of the house this time. My stomach turned. Whoever it was had circled around. I ducked down instantly, pressing my back to the wall beneath the window. I held my breath until my chest hurt, and even then, I refused to exhale too loudly. For a long stretch, nothing. I told myself maybe it was in my head, maybe I was overreacting, but just as my breathing began to steady, the noise shattered the silence again. 2 footsteps this time, directly beneath the living room window. I crawled across the floor, each movement deliberate, terrified that even the creak of the wood beneath my knees would give me away. The living room was darker than my bedroom, and the only light came from the faint glow of the television I'd forgotten to turn off. I grabbed the remote and killed the screen instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. My ears sharpened, desperate to catch anything. That's when I heard it. A soft scrape against glass, fingertips dragging across the window pane, slowly. My pulse slammed in my throat. Whoever was out there wasn't trying to hide anymore. They wanted me to know they were there. I clutched my phone, debating whether to call someone. But my voice would echo in the quiet, and I imagined them hearing me, realizing I was awake, alert, cornered. My thumb hovered over the screen, paralyzed by indecision. The scraping stopped. Silence again. I thought maybe they'd left. I thought maybe this nightmare had passed. But then came the sound that nearly made me scream. The faint rattle of the front door handle. A slow metallic jiggle, like someone gently testing the lock. Not breaking it, not forcing it. Just checking. I backed away from the door, every step careful, my eyes never leaving the knob. I prayed I had locked it earlier. I couldn't remember if I had. The handle rattled again, firmer this time, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I bolted to the kitchen, clutching a knife from the counter, my hand slick with sweat. My phone screen glowed faintly in my palm as I finally pressed the keypad. My voice shook as I whispered to the operator, giving my address as quietly as possible. Every second I spoke, I was convinced the person outside could hear me. The operator told me to stay calm, that a unit was on the way. But calm was impossible, because even as I tried to steady my voice, I could hear them moving again, back toward the window. I crouched low behind the counter, phone pressed to my ear, knife trembling in my hand. The footsteps grew faint. then silent again. Minutes crawled by. My ears rang with the effort of trying to pick out even the slightest sound. Nothing. No scraping, no rattling, no footsteps. Just the suffocating silence of the house. When the police finally arrived, the red and blue lights flashing through the blinds, I thought I'd collapse with relief. I met them at the door, still shaking, knife still in my grip. They searched the yard, the perimeter, even the nearby woods. Nothing. Whoever it was had vanished, leaving not a single trace, but the dirt outside the window told a different story. There, beneath the glass where I'd first heard the steps, were faint impressions. Shoe prints. Large ones, facing directly toward my bedroom. The officers told me I was lucky, that at least the intruder hadn't forced their way inside. But lucky wasn't how I felt. That night, I realized something that's never left me. If someone wants to watch you, to stand in the dark just a few feet away, you'll never know until they decide to make a sound. And when you finally hear it, it's already too late. The officers stayed for maybe half an hour, walking the yard with flashlights, checking every corner of the property. They told me they didn't see any signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no shattered glass, just those faint footprints beneath my bedroom window. They assured me it could have been a trespasser passing through, maybe a neighbor's kid pulling some kind of twisted prank. I nodded, but their words didn't make me feel safer. The fact that someone could stand outside my home for that long, testing my windows, rattling my front door, and then vanish without a trace, it terrified me more than anything else. After they left, the house felt impossibly quiet. Every creak of the wood, every shift of the wind outside made me flinch. I double-checked the locks on every door and window. I checked them again 10 minutes later. That became my new routine, locking, relocking, circling the house at night just to reassure myself. I never again slept with the window even slightly open. Weeks passed, and the memory of that night began to dull, but it never fully left me. One evening, I sat in the dark, trying to convince myself it was all behind me. That's when I heard it again, a faint noise outside. Not as clear as before, just a shift in the dirt, like weight pressing into the ground. I rushed to the window, heart hammering, but saw nothing. The yard was empty. The next morning, though, I noticed something near the grass line, a single, fresh footprint, facing the house. And that's when I realized, maybe he never left. Maybe he's just waiting for the right night to come back. It was nearly midnight, and I was standing alone at the bus stop near the edge of town. The streets were quiet, empty except for the occasional hum of a passing car in the distance. A single streetlight buzzed overhead, its weak glow flickering on and off, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. At first, I didn't think much of the man on the other side of the road. He wasn't at the stop with me, not exactly. He was just there, standing a little back from the curb, partially hidden in the shadows. He wasn't on his phone, wasn't smoking, wasn't moving at all. He was just facing my direction. I tried not to stare, but the longer I stood there, the more obvious it became that he hadn't taken his eyes off me. He didn't shift, didn't glance around, didn't look away. It felt like I was pinned under his gaze, every second dragging heavier than the last. When the bus finally arrived, I climbed on quickly, relieved to put some distance between us. But as the vehicle pulled away, I risked one last look through the window. He was still there, still standing in the same spot. I told myself I'd never see him again, but when I got home that night, my stomach dropped. Across the street from my building, under another flickering light, was the same man, motionless, staring straight up at my window. For the next few nights, I told myself I was imagining things. Cities are full of strange people, and maybe he just happened to stand in the same place as me, but that excuse fell apart quickly because he kept showing up. Every night. Same bus stop, same late hour, same stillness. He never boarded the bus, never even seemed to be waiting for one. He just watched. The second night, I tried not to look, but the weight of his stare was impossible to ignore. He didn't blink, didn't fidget, didn't check his phone. He was as still as the streetlight buzzing above us. When my bus finally arrived, I rushed on board, relieved the moment the doors closed. By the fourth night, it wasn't just unnerving, it was terrifying. When I stepped off at my stop near my neighborhood, I heard something behind me. Footsteps. At first I thought it was just another passenger, but the rhythm matched mine too perfectly, just a second behind. I turned, and there he was. The same man. Not across the street now, not far away, just a half block behind me, walking slowly, keeping me in his line of sight. My chest tightened. I sped up. So did he. I turned down a side street I never used, hoping to lose him, but when I glanced back, his figure had followed. He wasn't running, wasn't rushing, just walking. Calmly, as if he knew exactly where I was heading. I ducked into a small corner market. The fluorescent lights inside felt like the only safe place left in the world. I pretended to browse the shelves, but my eyes kept darting to the glass door. He was outside, not pacing, not leaving, just standing across the street, staring directly at the entrance. Minutes crawled by. Customers came and went. Still, he didn't move. My throat was dry, my hands shaking as I finally forced myself to buy something I didn't need, just so I wouldn't look suspicious. When I walked out, I braced myself, but he was gone. Relief flooded me, but it didn't last. As I walked the last few blocks home, the sound returned. Footsteps. Not constant, not rushed, just enough for me to know he was there. I didn't turn around. My only thought was to get inside. I sprinted the last stretch, fumbling with my keys, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it 3 times over. I pressed my back to the door, trying to calm my breathing, straining to hear if he'd followed me all the way. But there was nothing. No footsteps, no knock, no movement outside. Just silence. For the next few days, I debated telling someone, friends, police, anyone. But what could I say? That a man stood near me at a bus stop? That he looked at me? That he walked down the same street? None of it sounded like enough. And yet, every time I stepped outside after dark, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. Then came the night that broke me. I got off the bus, and for once, he wasn't there. The stop was empty, the street quiet. I felt a surge of relief so strong it almost made me laugh. Maybe it really was over. I started walking home, my guard dropping for the first time all week. That's when I heard it. I froze mid-step, my pulse hammering in my ears. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I'd see. And there he was, emerging from the shadows of an alley, his eyes locked on me. This time there was no distance, no pretending. He was only a dozen feet away. I ran. I didn't think, didn't breathe. I just ran. My footsteps slammed against the pavement, my lungs burned. But I didn't stop until I reached my building. I nearly dropped my keys in panic as I forced the door open and threw myself inside. I pressed my back to the wood, gasping for air. Outside, the night was silent again. I didn't hear him follow. I didn't hear anything. The next evening, I almost convinced myself not to go near the stop at all, but routine won. As I approached, I spotted him instantly. He wasn't hiding this time. He stood at the far end of the street, directly beneath a flickering lamp, waiting, watching. And as I passed, his lips curved, just barely, into the faintest smile. The police didn't take me seriously when I finally worked up the courage to call them. I told them a man had been following me, standing at the same bus stop every night, appearing near my home, staring. They asked if he had ever spoken to me, threatened me, touched me. When I said no, they told me there wasn't much they could do. "Unless he commits a crime, our hands are tied," one officer said, his voice flat, like this was just another pointless report. So I tried to change my routine. I left work earlier some nights, later on others. I even walked an extra mile just to take a different bus line. It didn't matter. No matter what I did, I'd eventually see him, standing at the edge of a street, leaning against a pole, never close enough to touch, but never far enough to ignore. For weeks, it became a twisted pattern. I'd spot him, my chest would tighten, and then he'd vanish. Sometimes he'd linger long enough for me to feel cornered. Sometimes he'd disappear the second I blinked. I stopped telling myself it was coincidence. I knew better. The last time I saw him was the worst. I'd left the bus earlier than usual, thinking I could outsmart him. But when I turned the corner into my own street, he was already there. Not across the road, not behind me, directly under the streetlight in front of my building. He didn't move as I froze. He didn't call out. He just stood there, his face half in shadow, his smile faint but unmistakable. And that was when I realized something I can't shake. He doesn't need to chase me. He just needs me to know he's always one step ahead. I used to love the library. It was quiet, predictable, a place where the outside world felt far away. On weekdays after work, I'd stop in for an hour or two just to clear my head. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. The smell of old paper filled the air, and the only sounds were the occasional cough or the rustle of pages being turned. That's why I noticed him right away. 2 tables over, a man sat with nothing in front of him. No book, no laptop, not even a phone. Just his hands folded neatly on the desk. At first I assumed he was waiting for someone, maybe just taking a break before grabbing a book. But the longer I sat there, the clearer it became. He wasn't waiting. He was watching. Every time I lifted my eyes from the page, his were already fixed on me. Unblinking, expressionless. Not curious, not distracted. Just locked in, as though I were the only thing in the room. I shifted in my chair, moved my bag to block his line of sight, even stacked some books like a flimsy barrier. It didn't matter. His eyes never wavered. After 20 minutes of this, my skin was crawling. I gathered my things and relocated deeper into the library, near the back where tall shelves created narrow aisles. For a few minutes, I let myself believe I was overreacting, that when I looked up again, he'd be gone. But when I finally raised my head, a chill spread across my chest like ice water. He had moved too. Same distance, same posture, same unblinking stare. That's when I realized this wasn't just someone noticing me. He was following me. I kept telling myself that there had to be a reasonable explanation, that maybe this man wasn't even aware of how strange his behavior appeared. But as the minutes passed, and I moved deeper into the stacks of books, the weight of his presence followed me with a precision that left little room for doubt. Each time I shifted aisles, pretending to browse the spines as if I were searching for a particular title, I would sense him repositioning as well. When I dared to glance through the narrow gaps between shelves, I would catch the faint outline of his head, angled in such a way that his eyes could still meet mine. The sound of the library, normally calming, the low hum of lights, the occasional cough, the steady rhythm of pages turning, had transformed into a backdrop that made the faint scuff of his shoes against the carpet echo like thunder in my ears. I tried to shake off the growing tension, but it only worsened when I turned down a long aisle and, halfway along, looked up to see him framed neatly at the opposite end, his body motionless, his face utterly expressionless. his eyes fixed with an intensity that seemed almost inhuman. For a moment, I considered ignoring him, but something inside me rebelled against the idea of pretending any longer. So I forced my legs to carry me forward, my heart pounding with each step, until the silence between us became unbearable, and I finally asked in a strained voice what exactly he thought he was doing. The words carried down the aisle with a faint echo, but his response never came. He remained still, his expression unchanged, as if I had spoken into empty space. The longer I held his gaze, the more oppressive the silence became, and soon I felt an overwhelming need to break away. My confidence drained as quickly as it had come, and I found myself retreating, clutching my bag, and moving briskly toward the exit. My shoes clicked against the polished floor, each step loud and awkward in the suffocating stillness of the building, until at last I reached the glass doors and, against my better judgment, turned for one final look. He was no longer standing in the aisle. Instead, he was seated once again at a table, his posture identical to how I had first seen him, hands folded neatly before him, eyes fixed in my direction as if nothing had occurred. The rush of cold air outside was a relief at first, yet the feeling of safety unraveled almost instantly as I passed the wide glass windows of a nearby storefront and caught the reflection of the library behind me. The rows of tables were visible through the panes, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights, and I realized with a sick certainty that the chair where he had just been sitting was empty. My pace quickened instinctively, my thoughts racing, my eyes flicking from shadow to shadow, searching for movement that never revealed itself, until I reached the door of my building with trembling hands. As I fit the key into the lock, a detail caught my attention that rooted me in place. The line of mailboxes to the side of the entrance, one of them left slightly ajar. Mine. Against every instinct, I reached out, pulled it open, and found a single folded sheet of paper resting inside. There was no envelope, no markings, nothing to suggest it belonged to anyone but me. With hands unsteady from fear and disbelief, I unfolded the page beneath the dull yellow glow of the lobby light, and in jagged handwriting, smeared faintly as though written in haste, were 4 words that turned my veins cold. I see you too. I never showed the note to anyone. I folded it back up, shoved it into the bottom of a drawer, and tried to convince myself it didn't matter. If I told someone, what would I even say? That a stranger slipped a piece of paper into my mailbox with 4 words on it? It wouldn't prove anything. It would only make me sound paranoid. From that night on, the feeling never left me. Even in crowded places, even in broad daylight, I carried the sense of eyes lingering on me from somewhere just beyond my vision. I avoided the library completely for weeks, but eventually, I had no choice but to go back. There was a research paper I needed to finish, and the sources I needed were only there. Walking through those glass doors felt like stepping back into a place I swore I'd never return to. The silence was the same, the smell of paper, the quiet scratch of pens on paper. Nothing out of place. For the first time, I almost let myself believe it had ended. But when I returned a book to the shelf, something slipped loose from between the pages and fluttered to the floor. Another folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. The same jagged handwriting stared back at me, only this time it read, "Took you long enough." I left the library without looking back, but the thought that followed me home was worse than anything I'd felt before. If he knew exactly which book I would touch, then maybe he had never left at all.